We're going to jump into kind of diving into the unique differences in culture among first responders. And I don't want anyone to like count the amount of videos I put into each particular culture, because I want to make sure we are all equal in these types of discussions, and it will all depend on what type of class I'm teaching of how much we will spend on each thing. But for this 6 hour that can be purchased for the intro to peer support, I want to make sure that we're covering all of the entities of first responders and the uniqueness of them. So there's a lot of similarities between each type of first responder. And culture obviously refers to the cumulative deposit of knowledge, experiences, beliefs, values, attitudes, meanings, hierarchies, notions of time, those role relations of a particular group of people. And culture is a way of life among a particular group. Behavioral, socially, they share symbols and how they communicate. And we all share several similarities in terms of uniforms, shift work, hierarchy. There are a lot of similarities that we have among first responders. However, there are a lot of things that set us apart. I often make the joke to my firefighters that, they really have it good because they can go home back to the fire station and, all sleep together. Ha ha. But when I say that, I'm being silly, but what I mean is they get to have that time of going back to the station if they're a full-time firefighter, and they can process that stuff together. I mean, they in and of themselves in their own stations where they're on a 24-hour shift together can share and divide pain just among themselves. And they probably didn't have 30 hours of peer support training, but they can do that day in and day out together on calls to help one another. And so it's not new. I can guarantee every single one of you in this class has done peer support long before you took this class. But it's just important for us to kind of gauge the differences in our subcultures, because I can guarantee in my world, at least every entity of first responder land will cross its path in one situation or not. Take for example, the Burnsville shooting of our 3 fallen, 2 officers and firefighter in February of 24. The amount of intricacies that I was with that was multiple agencies helping Burnsville civilians, helping some of their staff, helping some of other entities' staff, and how like different fire departments, city government agencies, first responders, paramedics, special agents, etc., and just how it didn't matter what uniform we were wearing. We all were there for the same reason. And sometimes that works really well and sometimes it doesn't. But in the cases of significant losses we've had in 24, thank God we've had these kind of connections that we've been able to connect. And if that's the only silver lining, as the young woman in the last video talked about, if there is one positive thing I can take of my horrible experiences, again, that I'm here to share my story. I'm here to share my journey and how I hope no one repeats, because there is life after the reasons we turn to maladaptive things, and can be so much better. And post-traumatic growth is attainable if we just keep going and we keep pushing through and we put the right people in our lives and do the work. So in terms of the police culture, obviously we'll look at the blue line. I threw some articles up on this slide that I can give to you later if you can't take a picture of them, of just some articles that have been locally where we've used mental health and first responders in terms of how we can work together in the eyes of a particular crisis. The crisis in this article is after a female had ended her life by suicide, causing officers to shoot when she pulled the gun on them. And again, it was a multifaceted, multi-agency type of situation. And I wouldn't call it a privilege, but it was intertwined in trying to help navigate some of that in my work. So obviously I kind of shared a little bit about myself kind of in my intro in terms of kind of one cop story, and I'll just kind of share kind of my perspective. Being in law enforcement since I was 23, it was super embarrassing. I swore in on my 23rd birthday and had my classmates all sing happy birthday to me and the chief. And I didn't know anyone, and I did not need that kind of attention. But like I said, I started out in corrections in Red Wing. I honestly thought that was the coolest job on the planet. And had I not made it into law enforcement, I'd probably still be there. My dad was in corrections for 27 years, Oak Park and Stillwater. And I've kind of just followed his footsteps most of my life. But I had a calling and I wanted to work with sexual assault survivors at the BCA was actually my passion. And they told me I needed 12 years experience or go get my law degree. And so I applied at Madison because it was out of state and just better resources at the time. And 2,100 applicants, and somehow I made the top 20. And by the time I got there, I could do all the things that I could have done back in Minnesota and establish myself, built a couple houses, had an amazing, group of friends and great career. A day in the life, I like to describe, I've been on a bunch of panels for a couple news organizations and whatnot in terms of what's a day in the life, right? And I explain it by 10% total thrill seeking adrenaline and 90% pure boredom. But today I think it's different. My agency, we were a single squad. There was only two squad cars in the city of Madison. And now today that's become a new norm of just having dual squads when we can, just for safety of the level of anti-police sentiment that's been occurring since 2020 and George Floyd and Kim Potter's event. And it's just a lot more dangerous. And so now today, many of us are two to a car, always having backup. Our ability to just take calls without even notifying dispatch are done. But the way I would describe it is I really enjoy predictability, but I also hate being bored. And there was predictability and the unpredictability of every single day. You didn't know what you were going to expect. And one day you could have 3 calls and then try to go be proactive and run some traffic and go pull over a couple really fancy cars. Or you would be, going from a death investigation to a child abuse case to go to the hospital and interview a sexual assault victim and take her rape kit. Every single thing was different. And my career always had me on a path with mental health. There's a huge population of mental health folks in Madison because they have a mental health hospital there and amazing mental health services. And so that just became kind of something that I did quite often in my role as an officer and then later as a sergeant, is help folks who are dealing with mental health individuals in the community, because it's not exactly something many officers had a lot of training in, is mental health back in 1996, which I'm going to date myself again and feel really old. But there just was not, and there still isn't a significant amount of mental health training, except now we're getting trained in critical incident stress. In crisis intervention training on how to de-escalate folks by the 40-hour, basic course in crisis intervention training. And so we're doing much more around mental health. But again, it's 2024, 28 years later since I started. And I had a lot of critical incidents. One of my worst calls was a 13-year-old that took a bullet in the chest for his 15-year-old brother who had ripped off a gangbanger in Milwaukee. And I was the last to see him, touch him, talk to him, watch him die in the operating room. And I had to actually show the surgeon where his bullet was lodged because I knew it didn't come out. And that was my first homicide such as that. I was a very young officer, and that was one of my worst calls. But again, as a sergeant, you go to every death investigation, so I've kind of lost track. It's not quite in the sixth sense if I see dead people, but I've lost track of how many dead bodies I've seen, and it doesn't usually bother me too much. Ironically, I'm kind of sick that way, and it's fascinating in some ways. All depends on the medical examiner and their sense of humor or lack thereof. But yeah, I had a great career, became a sergeant, and got to do lots of amazing things with SWAT and field training and peer support. And my passion became doing critical incident stress management debriefings for our huge agency. And that just kind of transitioned into when I moved into retirement, went back to grad school, and then basically finished what I set off to do, which I wanted to be a psychiatrist, but let's just be honest, I didn't want to go to school for another 12 years. So went back to grad school, and here I am. And now I get to do therapy and consult across the state and be a subject matter expert and trainer. And so I'm just going to kind of show this quick video, just kind of a day in the life. And yes, it is particularly a female officer, but I just think it's important to show kind of different perspectives of each. Obviously, men and women experience this job very differently, and that goes for every single specialty.
My name is Vivian Raigosa. I'm a police officer for the city of San Fernando. Being a female, you have to be a little bit more careful because people can hurt you a lot more. So that's why I have to be like twice as more cautious about everything, twice as more observant. So it's kind of like a job up here. It's like a 24/7 kind of thing. Going into this field, I think it's a real eye-opener that, yeah, you might not make it out. This is something that I was called to do.
30 routes of green from the flame.
I enjoy the time that before work because it kind of centers me, you know, whether it may be like if I have any things to do tomorrow or something, just little stuff, you know, but I really enjoy cooking. Oh yeah, that's Lady. She's always here. Lady is 2.5 years old. She's actually my sister's, but you know, we all love her. There's a lot of eggs. I eat eggs almost every day. Scrambled, over easy, poached, you name it. Egg white only. I am the egg master. I'm trying to be serious, but I can't. I can't. Can't mix the jalapeno. We have here all of our names of all of our family members who have passed away. And pretty much for the Day of the Dead, we always set up an altar, like maybe a week before, and we just commemorate the people in our family who have passed away. Yeah. I literally always like to give thanks here because I'm about to leave my house. I just ask for God to protect me. I always ask Him to protect my partners at work. Being a female, you have to be a little bit more careful, you know, because people can overpower you. So that's why I have to be like twice as more cautious about everything, twice as more observant. So it's kind of like a job up here. It's like a 24/7 kind of thing. So now we're gonna be on our way to the ranch. Hi, Duke. Having a horse does a lot of things for my mental health. I like things that help me focus, and being with a horse, I want to focus. Like I'm always focusing because you want to make sure that they're safe as well as you, right? But it also relaxes me. It's very therapeutic just to come and comb him and see what he needs, you know? Bless you. We're gonna work Duke out a little bit, just make him run. And I like to do this too because you get to see if your horse is hurting at any point in his body. We're gonna make sure that he's good.
You got time, and everybody says it passes you by. Don't go thinking that's how it has to be.
Good boy, good boy.
For now,
Good.
beyond.
There you go. There you go, Duke. Raigosa, my last name. love this. Like even saddling, you know, it's like really like relaxing. Like I said, takes all your tension, all your focus. Here comes the train, Papa. This is like me time, you know, this is like my zen, my relaxed time. You guys came at a very perfect night, not only because it's Halloween, but the team tonight is just golden. Everyone is super excited to have you guys. I love them all. So I just finished showering. I feel comfortable with a bun because you just never know if you have to fight or something, and you know, I think the more that they have to grab onto, it's like more dangerous. Okay, done. I'm gonna do my makeup and then I'll see you guys right now. Okay, now I'm ready, let's go to work. Okay. I like to listen to music that pumps me up, you know? So the first time I told my father that I wanted to be a police officer, I was about like 21. And my father was completely against it, was like, no, like, look at you. Like, you really, like, a police officer? I'm like, what's what I want to do, Dad? So it was like a straight up no. So I studied what they want me to study. And after that, my dad and me made this pact. The minute you graduate, you get to do whatever you want, right? And when I graduated, he asked me, oh, so what's next for you? And I told him, like, you know what I want to do? And he's like, okay, well, when are you gonna start? So he started training me, actually. He started training me physically, like to be able to jump the wall and like how to become more physically like fit, because I was super overweight. If it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't be able to have passed the academy either. I just want to make sure that I live a good, wholesome life. If something were to ever happen to me, like I want everyone to know, like I lived and I've done everything that I wanted to do up to this day. So we're arriving to the city of San Fernando. I want to see how it's going to be like today. You don't know if they're going to be real weapons, fake weapons, so we got to be extra careful today, you know? It is 5:25, we just got to work. This is No Name, right here. He's been with us for like the last 3 weeks. Okay, so right now I'm going to go into the locker room, I'm going to get into my uniform, get all my gear set up, and then I'll be right out.
Halloween, it's gonna be busy. Alright, you guys know Orange Grove, Huntington, from 2nd Street all the way to Glen Oaks, it's gonna be really busy. Alright, so do a lot of CRMs. Per chief, he wants us to do CRMs there as well. Let's go out there, let's have fun, be safe. Alright?
This is Officer Lopez.
How's it going,
I went
Officer
to
Lopez?
academy with him as
Yes,
well.
class 210.
And then Officer Murillo, I graduated with him.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's my first Halloween, so here at this department.
It's also my first Halloween, so let's see what happens. Did you work on this?
No, I did it. First one. Yeah.
Oh, it's all our first.
Yeah, all our
Wow.
first.
Yeah, we're all fairly young, so.
Yes, this is FTO PAC. This is your watch commander.
Hello everyone. Basically we're in charge of the whole city. I'm in charge of the station, I'm in charge of my guys. Anything that happens, I'm responsible for it, and everything's on the good.
So we have to do a vehicle inspection at the beginning of every shift. Make sure that all the lights or any function on the car works. So we do this at the beginning of every shift. Yeah, I need to eat right now because sometimes if something happens and I don't eat, and I haven't eaten since I woke
She's
up.
vegetarian, by the way, so good luck.
So I want to eat, and Rodriguez doesn't want to eat because he wants to get into
It's
something. already.
Halloween. There's a lot of people trying to do, or out here to do malicious things. So I will be in a UC car today, undercover, looking for whoever's trying to do malicious things out there.
And I just want to eat.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll stand by. I'll
Okay.
do a CRM.
Okay. We need to have the food right now because it'll happen. A call will come out, we'll get really, really busy, and then it's happened where you can't eat. Right now we have the ability to eat because there's nothing going on. We just, our officers are tied up with CRMs, which are community resource management, right? Okay, but if something comes up as we're eating, we're gonna have to leave. Hello. Are you gonna be all together or separate? Together. That's what I was also wondering about today. I was like, I wonder if because it's Halloween, people are gonna look at me and think like if I'm wearing a costume or something, right? Because the people that were behind us in Spanish, they said, "Oh no, she's not a real cop. It's a costume. I thought she was real." Well, I mean, when I turned around, I'm pretty sure they saw my gun. I got a LoJack hit.
Reply code.
So this means we have a LoJack hit, pretty much saying that there's a stolen vehicle near us. 23 control, are you clear for a LoJack hit?
Turn back to a code 37 vehicle. It's a 2008 Volvo S60 4-door black in color.
10-4. This right here is a LoJack. If there's a vehicle that has LoJack and our system detects it, if it comes back to a code 37 vehicle, that means it's stolen, right? So we had a hit, but at this time we lost signal. So it's either moving or we're getting away from it. So right now we are going to one of our busiest streets, but we're gonna go see the trick-or-treaters. Just show presence, you know, make sure that we're interacting with the community. There's a lot of kids. Or do you want it behind your back like this? That's funny. Well, have a great night, okay? They're sending us somewhere. 10-4. So they want us to do extra patrol where we were just at. Oh my gosh, it's really busy here, guys. Wow, a lot of kiddos.
11 David, go ahead. Holding table.
Hi.
To pick up.
So awesome. This is so great. Clown rooms are super creepy. Look at that, look at that. 23 on code 6 on Orange Grove and 5th. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Of course. Yes, of course. But it's just really nice to see how the community really celebrates Halloween. That was insane. That was super busy. That was a lot more people than I expected, to be quite honest. So the watch commander currently called us in for all the units to show up. So we're gonna see what he might need right now.
Oh, all the families are here. Oh, and then you gotta get this. See that? It's part of the style. Some people call me Superman.
Oh
I wouldn't go that far, but.
You have to be able to trust one another. I love these guys, and I'm here in this agency because they make it fun for me. After 15 years, I feel like I'm a rookie again. You know?
But who's the actual rookie, bro?
How was that trunk or treat during honor?
It's good, it's good.
This is Chief Valdez.
Hello. How is everybody? I wasn't expecting this, but this is good.
The man, the myth, the legend.
So, man, it's insane.
Did you see me traffic controlling?
Well,
I almost got hit by like 30 cars.
people do the same thing too. So we're actually gonna go. We're gonna go 10-8. We're gonna go patrol ourselves. So I'll be out there as well.
I was
Yeah.
out there, and I don't know how many pictures I took
Oh yeah.
with the kids.
They would go to the middle of the street. Can we take a picture? I'm like, all right, go ahead, hurry.
Yeah. No, it's good, and it just shows the community support and the hard work that you guys do and the trust that you guys build. So just be safe while we're doing it. Yeah.
10-4. 23 on 10-8 en route to Hewitt.
So obviously that was a very kind of cheerful demonstration of the way we would want law enforcement to be, the way it used to be, where I would get myself ready to go, do my routine, walk, run, bike, hike, swim before. I always worked a 3 to 11 shift, and that's where I forever stayed. I let all the moms and dads who had kids take the day shift. But it's a little different today than it was in my 16 years, in a city oversized town. And today it's much different, and you're gonna hear perspectives from your peers of how specifically law enforcement has definitely changed. Never in a million years would I think, I'd have clients tell me that they're afraid their partners won't back them up, or they're afraid that their partners will not use force to save their life if they have the risk of potentially being arrested and taken to prison. And so there's different realities. Well, we all have to operate legally within the law. The challenges that officers face today is just a different level of demoralization, where just like she had said, she puts that uniform on, feels good about what she's doing, pumped up to go to her shift. And I have too many officers today who dread going to the station. They dread going back to work, are looking at ways to retire early, or are trying to figure out how they won't be ordered in for overtime that night. And we're operating a deficit where in my time, it was 2,000 applicants. And today we're lucky if we get 1 or 2 qualified people for openings in the 150s across the state of Minnesota. And so it's a difficult level, and that's not even going into corrections dispatchers that are all in the same deficit because of their connection to law enforcement in some way, is my suspicion. And it's very difficult to staff our most critical places: prisons, the streets, our safety, fire, against foreign and domestic, and it's never ending. And we are all hyper vigilant. And I wish what this video showed could be what we're facing. It's still part of our culture, the culture that we want in terms of being each other's brothers and sisters in blue. But in certain some circumstances, you know, people are very much just dividing and are more cautious of family first, job second. And for so many years, you know, it was service over self. And it's just a very different time. And the next video I'm going to show you might be hard to watch, but it's kind of a reality of what we're facing today and all the aftermath of what can happen in a day of life of a police officer and a firefighter.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Lindberg. I'm the city manager here in Burnsville, and it's been a difficult and emotional day here for our community and our team. I thank you all for being with us today as we share some important information on a critical incident that occurred in our community this morning. Today, we'll have several updates for you. First, Drew Evans from the BCA will provide an update on the critical incident that occurred. And then both our police chief and our fire chief will make comments about this difficult day in our team, in our family here in Burnsville. Words can't express how hard today has been. We know that people want and need information, and that's our role in providing good government and good service to the community. And we want to also make sure that we take good care of our team, the people who serve this community day in and day out, and their families. So thank you for giving us the grace and the patience and the understanding to inform their loved ones, to take care of our team, and to even process this ourselves. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Evans with the BCA.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Drew Evans. I'm the superintendent at the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and we've been asked to investigate this matter, and I'll provide a quick update. First, thank you on behalf of the team here for all the law enforcement support, the governor's support, Commissioner of Public Safety support for everybody that's having just an incredibly difficult day. This is really a terrible day for the city of Burnsville, all of the residents, the law enforcement, and fire communities that are mourning the loss of these public servants that occurred early today. At approximately 1:50 a.m. on February 18th, Burnsville police were called to a residence in the 12,600 block of 33rd Avenue South on a report of a domestic situation where a man was reported to be armed and barricaded with family members in the home. We later learned that there were 7 young children in the home, ranging from ages 2 to 15 at the time of this event occurred. When officers got to the scene, the individual was barricaded, and they spent quite a bit of time negotiating with this individual who was barricaded in the home, and additional officers responded at that time. At one point during that barricaded situation, the subject opened fire on the officers in the home, and officers Elmstrad, Ruge, and Finseth for the fire department, Mr. Finseth, were killed by the gunman during the response. One other officer, Sergeant Adam Medlicott, was injured and was shot as well, where he's suffered non-life-threatening injuries, but has been treated, is in the process of being treated. At approximately 8 a.m., the subject was reported to be deceased in the home, and later that morning, those other children and family members were able to escape from the home. Residents are asked to allow our teams to stay away from the area and allow our teams to complete the crime scene investigation that needs to occur in that location still at this time. I'm going to go through quickly just a little bit of background on the officers before I turn it over to Police Chief Schwartz. And it's about who they are. Paul Elmstrand is 27 and joined the Burnsville Police Department in August of 2017, first as a community service officer, and he was later promoted to officer in July of 2019. He was part of the department's mobile command staff, peer team, honor guard, and field training unit. Officer Matthew Ruge, age 27, joined the Burnsville Police Department in April of 2020. He was part of the department's crisis negotiations team, and was a physical evidence officer. And then firefighter Adam Finseth, age 40, has been a Burnsville firefighter paramedic since 2019. As they noted, we're in the very beginning stages of this investigation. I know everybody wants to know exactly what occurred and really what led up to these really terrible event that occurred today. I'd ask that you have patience as we work through that. We'll piece together everything that we can to provide the answers in due time. At this time, we're providing these basic updates so that we can share just a little bit of what occurred. We'll answer a few questions at the conclusion of this, but our crime scene will be active and ongoing in that process. I will note just a few things in this in terms of the questions. We still don't know the exact exchange of gunfire that occurred. Certainly, several officers did return fire. I will note that this individual had several guns and large amounts of ammunition and shot at the police officers from multiple positions within the home in that incident. And the exact timing and cadence of what occurred will be part of our active investigation as we review video, officers' body cams, video that might be in the area, conduct interviews, and all available evidence to really figure out exactly what occurred in this incident. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Police Chief Tanya Schwartz.
Thank you for being here. This is a hard day. It's a really hard day for our public safety family. We're hurting. Okay, we're hurting. Today, 3 members of our team made the ultimate sacrifice for this community. They are heroes. Our police officers and our fire paramedics, they come to work every day. They do it willingly They know that they might have to give up their life for their partners, for someone else. They know they have to give up their life sometime, and they do it anyways. And you cannot understand it if you're not in the profession. Every day we want them to go home to their families. Every day we pray that they go home to their families. And today that's not happening. We are all hurting. Our officers, our fire department, our families, all of our staff, our community. We're heartbroken. We are heartbroken. We are going to need time to be together. Please, our families need time to grieve. They need time to be together. We need you to pray for them. That's what we need right now. Superintendent Evans shared a little bit about each of the officers. I will just share that Officer Paul Elmstrand was with the department for 6 years and 6 months. Officer Matthew Ruge with the police department for 3 years and 10 months. Sergeant Adam Medlicott, who's expected to survive, with the department for 9 years and 5 months. We talk about it often here in Burnsville. We're a family. We take care of each other. And days like today is so important. So I'm going to turn it over to my brother at the fire department, Chief Jungman, and he is going to speak about the fire department family.
Good afternoon. I am BJ Jungman. I'm the fire chief for the city of Burnsville. This is the toughest day that the city of Burnsville and our public safety family has ever experienced. My hearts and prayers go out to the families who lost a loved one in the line of duty today. Our folks come to work every day and are willing to give up the ultimate sacrifice of their life, but no one expects it to happen. It's a tragic day. We're all grieving, and we're all trying to understand what happened and why. I would like to share a little bit of information about the firefighter paramedic we lost in the line of duty today. Firefighter paramedic Adam Finseth, badge 83, was one of our SWAT paramedics and has been in the fire department for 5 years. He also served the city of Savage and the city of Hastings prior to coming to work at the city of Burnsville. No matter how much we try to understand that, there are no words to describe these public safety officer families, what they're going through right now. Our Burnsville community, including our city staff and police and fire families, are grieving. We ask the media to respect the families and their privacy as they are processing this information. We thank our mutual aid partners who responded to the incident and are helping us during this difficult time. We've had an outpouring of support through our community, which we greatly appreciate. And at this time, we'd ask our community to support each other and help each other grieve. We'd ask them to respect the families that lost someone today. We ask everybody to show grace and understanding for our community members and our city staff who are impacted by this. We're going to provide more information moving forward and how you can support these families financially in the coming days. I would ask you to go to burnsvillemn.gov/community updates, and we will keep you informed there. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our city manager to close, Greg Lindberg.
Chiefs, thank you. Chief Schwartz said it best just now. We're hurting as a team and as a family, particularly for those individuals who have chosen our police and our fire departments as a career to serve this community and to live out day to day what is one of the most important things here in Burnsville, and that's keeping our community safe. We're going to support each other. We're going to care for one another as a team, because we talk a lot about in this organization and as a family that if we take care of each other, that's when we can best care for our community. And we're going to do that, and it's going to be hard. We'll support our staff the best that we can in the coming days. We also will make sure that you have all of the information that you need to help us do the same. I'd ask that you use the website burnsvillemn.gov/community updates, where we'll be posting all of the information that we share with the community and beyond as we work together to continue to support each other, to care for the community. And speaking of caring for the community, I'd invite all of you, our community and beyond, to attend an informal vigil tonight outside of City Hall, where we'll join together and start the process of grieving and caring for each other in our support to strengthen our community and to make sure that our team, our staff, the people who call Burnsville home and beyond know that together we will create a safe community and one where we can all work together in caring for each other. And finally, the chiefs and I are going to return to the business of taking care of our family and taking care of our community. We really thank you for the time that you spent here today and appreciate your willingness to join us. So thank you very much.
Okay, guys, that's a choked up situation, and take a minute, just kind of remembering our fallen first responders. And then there's adds to the list, Jamal, Minneapolis, and others, Joshua ones last year up north. It's just far too many, and we're all facing this. You pick which one, and we're all touched by it. None of us leave this unscathed. So as we kind of go into these, I know we're showing a lot of videos, but again, I don't want to be a talking head for you for 6 hours straight. You'll not want to meet me when we have class together. But as we kind of go into kind of the next cultural of first responders, it's often correctional officers often feel like they're the forgotten ones, and I can say that without a doubt, that that's often how they feel, that they're an extension of law enforcement, but not really. And I've recently, in my role as the mental health director for HQ, have been working with DOC and have toured all of the facilities and just meeting people in general, just the restless, irritable discontent of not knowing when you're going to get a day off or how many days of overtime you're worked, or just how to manage being safe in an environment that is lacking enough staff sometimes to staff a facility, a prison. And the number of assaults just continues to escalate among staff, which just goes into a multitude of reasons why it's hard to hire people in corrections, and we don't give them the credit of what they do. And I feel like I have a good sense of it. It's what I've grown up with my entire life. My dad started in Stillwater and then moved over to Oak Park Heights when it opened, and finished his career there as a watch commander. And so I've heard the stories of, the losses, the suicides, the assaults, the pain, the toll that this type of work takes on oneself, and the fact that how your life often changes living within those walls as an employee, working 12 to 16-hour shifts at a time in the walls of a prison, surrounded by people that may be planning to hurt you, kill you, similar to law enforcement. However, different tools to be able to use in these situations, and are expected to handle things with no sidearms or other kinds of self-defense tools and mechanisms such as tasers. And so they're left to their own voices and training and their peers to support them and help keep them safe. And it's a struggle. And I know that I want to make sure that we don't forget any of our first responder specialties and how we are all have different values, and we have similarities and we have differences. And I just want to commend every single specialty that we're talking about. Just because I'm a cop doesn't mean that I want to give more credit to that. There's no comparison is a thief of joy, and we are all in this together and have our pain in our own specialties. And I know when I was in corrections, it was terrifying. I worked with juveniles and I had a pair of handcuffs and I worked the night shift. And if you didn't have the ability to talk, if anything we learn in corrections is how to talk to people under pressure. And so just gonna watch this quick video, just kind of give you another perspective. If you're the group that's gonna be joining this on this, if I'm way off on this, just tell me, but just another perspective of different specialties and how peer support is so necessary for each one.
This is a place where very few people want to spend any time. What happens there is shrouded in mystery, literally locked up behind high concrete walls.
Florence State Prison's maximum security unit has been kept off limits to news crews for nearly a decade now. But Troy Hayden and photojournalist Eric Corrales, they got access inside, and they introduce us to probably the least visible arm of law enforcement working to keep all of us safe. Troy has the story. Troy.
It was quite an experience, John and Carrie, I have to tell you. And you know, the saying is Arizona corrections officers may deal with more violent felons in a single day than a typical police officer does in a year. We shadowed a corrections officer at the oldest and arguably the most dangerous part of the Florence prison complex, and here it is right here. It's the Central Unit. First started being completed back in 1908, full of maximum security inmates. And not just regular max, these are walking 5 inmates. It means they're max security. They're allowed to congregate together and walk around outside of their cells. And it makes this a very challenging place to keep order. It's home to some of the most violent people in our society. The predators, the felons. They've committed terrible crimes, and they have to be watched nearly every minute, double teamed when they move, because they can turn on you in an instant, like this vicious attack, when as many as 30 inmates kicked, punched, pummeled 7 corrections officers in Florence's max security Central Unit. Pull that one. And that's why when Fox 10 photographer Eric Corrales and I became the first news crew to enter this unit in nearly a decade, we were fit with stab vests.
We're worried about your safety first and foremost. On this yard, it's a level 5 yard, so we have not the average criminal here.
We're here to document a day in the life of an Arizona corrections officer, one of the most dangerous jobs in our state.
West side, the first week I was scared. You know, the first time the gates closed, you hear the smash behind you, you're like, oh God, I'm in prison.
Our guide is Officer Cody, who's been on the job for 3 years. From what we saw, his day consists mostly of moving inmates, searching inmates, searching their cells, confiscating contraband, and keeping himself out of harm's way, which has to be job one. Because the men housed here can be unpredictable and show no mercy towards each other or corrections officers. It seems like one of the biggest challenges would be you're dealing with people who don't necessarily think like other people do.
Yeah.
I mean, these men have done some bad things.
Yes, so we know they have short fuses, we know they have anger problems, some even have mental problems.
And they are all housed here in Florence Prison's historic Central Unit. The prison's gray concrete walls rise high into the air. They're topped with razor wire. And then on top of that, an electric fence that will deliver a fatal shock to any escapee. And inside these walls, the men have nothing but time to think of ways to hurt each other and the officer.
I've seen weapons made out of everything, you know, tray lids, out of what? Tray lids, paper, cellophane wrap, you know. Over here, man.
And that's why there are random pat-downs like this one throughout the yard. Some inmates are considered so dangerous, they're not allowed to walk free, even behind these concrete walls. What we're looking at here is a series of 10 by 10 rec cages. These are men who haven't proven themselves trustworthy enough to be out with the general population just yet. So they take this step, and after a certain period of time, they can be with other inmates. And this is where we get a first-hand look at how quickly the mood of inmates can change. When we first arrive, they try to engage us.
That's that phone boy. 23 years in the business. Yeah. I just seen you last night. Oh, he looked bigger on TV. Let him know we're treating you good. Talk to me like that, kid. I love her.
But when I asked if one of them wanted to talk with us on camera, the mood quickly turned.
Don't do it. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. All you guys gonna do is go talk.
I'm told if the leader of the group turns, the entire group tends to follow. And that's a real danger here. So it's time to leave this area.
Yeah, I think it's good for us not to stay in one place too long. That's probably the key. Yeah, they build up fast. You know?
One of those men is named Richard Coffey. He's considered such a risk that before he can leave his cell, he has to strip down. And Officer Cody inspects his unclothed body while he's still behind a locked cell door.
Open your mouth, open your cheeks, all right? Let me see your armpits. All right, go ahead and pull your scrotum up. All right, turn around.
Once he's cleared, Coffey is cuffed. And as with all inmates classified the way he is, 2 officers at a time have to hold his arms as he's escorted to where he needs to go.
What's your interaction like with the corrections officers?
For me, it's fine. I respect them. They respect me as a man. It's just a two-way street. As long as I get that respect back, I get the same respect. And then I don't act crazy. So, act crazy, I stay here longer, which I don't want.
When you put you over there in the middle of those guys.
Coffey's being brought to a classroom where he's working on changing his violent behavior.
There you go.
He has to graduate from this class before he can be let out of his cell and interact with other prisoners here, out in the main yard.
We'll walk over here.
And as we approach, an inmate barks out a warning to his fellow inmates. The most privileged here in Max get 2.5 hours in the yard, 3 days a week.
You're just looking for one-on-one problems. You know, this guy's talking to this guy. It looks like he's getting violent, and you just keep an eye on them. For the most part, they handle all their own problems.
Being on the yard, I can't help but notice we are vastly outnumbered. But if they wanted to, there could be 50 inmates on top of each of us before backup arrives. The officers in the yard carry only pepper spray and stun guns. The only real protection, the gunmen up in the surrounding towers.
This guy up here is your ultimate backup. Yes. When you're on the yard. He's our eyes, he's our ears, he's everything, really.
When you think about all their challenges, maybe it's not surprising that the Department of Corrections is short on corrections officers, and not dozens of them, hundreds.
Just in this unit alone, the deputy warden advises that he's 60 officers down. Complex-wide, it's more than that, and statewide, it's well over 500.
And the state is hiring. These officers are a vital line of defense between hardened criminals and your loved ones. And now you know what their day is like.
The Department of Corrections told me just today that they brought down that number to 450 open positions. Still a lot of vacancies. And many officers told me they have to work overtime to compensate for that. And recruiting is difficult when you look at the pool of people who would want to do that job and the starting pay. A DOC corrections officer starts at $15.81 an hour with benefits. But county detention officers working in jails in Pima, Maricopa, and Pinal counties, they all make more money to start. And so do law enforcement officers outside of jails and prisons. In fact, Phoenix police officers make more than $24 an hour to start. I reached out to Governor Doug Ducey on this. His office said, quote, the state continues to examine competitive compensation and benefit packages, unquote. And the new budget for next year calls for a 5% increase in state corrections officer pay.
So that was kind of a reality. Obviously, again, every single prison, every single Department of Corrections facility is different, has its own unique struggles. Some have good populations with lots of programming. Other prisons have very high risk offenders who are in Supermax, such as Oak Park Heights in Minnesota, where every single movement in the prison is highly monitored. However, again, like they said in that, incarcerated individuals have all day to think about what they are trying to do, what their angle is, the gang populations within these facilities, who has money and who has power, and how they're getting drugs into the buildings inside the prison walls, and how many overdoses are occurring. fentanyl and other types of things with how creative and technical it's becoming of getting drugs in through the mail. So it's a constant battle for Department of Corrections folks and corrections officers to try to stay ahead of a population that is highly intelligent, highly resourceful, and like they said, there could be 100 IPs, as we call it, to corrections officers, and that's not really good odds, which is why it's so critical that we have accurate staff, and the staff that we have, we're taking exceptional care of. And I can probably guarantee anyone watching this who's in corrections is probably laughing and blowing up at the screen. And I hear you. And it's very, very frustrating. And so thank you all for what you do. It is very difficult. So moving on to the next one is obviously our red line, which is our firefighters. And while there are definitely similarities and differences between this culture and, say, police, everybody still likes firefighters when they show up, right? When you call the police, it's your worst day in the middle of the night, but it could be your worst day calling the fire department too. But generally, they're not met with the resistance that police are in terms of cooperation of people who are trying to help. However, sometimes due to their uniform and how they are associated with police can also be at risk of harm. Obviously, the story we've had in Burnsville, losing a firefighter who was attempting to save the life of an officer. There's a lot of differences just in subcultures among firefighters, in the sense, if you're a career firefighter, meaning you're a full-time firefighter, where you're either on a 24, 72-hour schedule, 48, 96 kind of schedule, where you're at a station days, hours away from your family and loved ones, and that can get really, really hard. So that kind of lies one of the biggest differences between being a firefighter and kind of the other specialties, with the exception, obviously, of the military. When you're deployed, obviously you're not sleeping, you're in the same area, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not necessarily the full time of it. Whereas firefighting, they're kind of have their own community, their own subculture, which is also based in hierarchy and rank, and firefighters and officers and lieutenants and captains and deputy chiefs, and they have a similar hierarchy structure to police, military, and corrections. And again, like I said, the vast majority of firefighters are volunteer firefighters. And many times I am asked if there's a difference in PTSD or other type of mental health disorders that are different between a volunteer firefighter and a career firefighter. And the research unequivocally states that it's not. There's no difference in PTSD diagnoses for volunteer versus firefighters. And like I make the joke, haha, they get to go back to their fire stations together and sleep there. Volunteer firefighters, right? They're in the middle of their day, pager goes off, they're going to a fire, and then most likely they're just going home, right? And so then there's no time for that emotional processing of what they just went through if it's a tough call. And, you know, unless they instigate that on their own. But firefighters are some of my most challenging and old school mentality a little bit. And yet when I get to work with them, it's one of my favorite groups. And most of them still really love their job. And the big difference between some career fire departments and elsewhere is if you're a paramedic or not. So most firefighters are not paramedics, and then others are. And then there's sometimes some animosity between the two, because a paramedic is going to want another paramedic to help out. And so if you're a firefighter and you're only an EMT, sometimes there's some friction there, because the paramedics have to take, if you're running an ambulance for your agency, then you're running medicals all the time. And so sometimes there's a little animosity between the EMTs who don't have their paramedic license yet, or maybe don't want one. So I've had an amazing time working with a variety of different departments. And this is kind of a little more upbeat demonstration of some of the culture, a day in the life of this young man on a 911 ride along.
I think a woman fell and hit her head on concrete.
Go ahead.
You guys don't do that.
Oh.
Thank you. We appreciate it. You take care.
What does 9/11 symbolize to you?
I'm from New York originally. Got my start in the fire service up there.
That's the cliche. I gotta ask. Has a baby ever been left at the station?
Yep.
How many times at night do you get waken up? Welcome back to the Ride Around Show, y'all. Today we'll be interviewing a firefighter and following a crew on some day in the life activities in this 9/11 feature. We'll be seeing how they set up for a shift and going on some calls like the one we just got right now.
Thanks for driving, Bryce.
How's that for a kickoff? Man, I love it. So you guys are coming from Station 1.
Yeah.
Is that the biggest station in Fayetteville?
So Station 1's, it used to be called Central Fire Station. I think it is the oldest. That and Station 2 right on campus. But yeah, there's 9 stations total.
You said today there's 3 trucks offline?
So right now they've got a couple units out of pocket. They're going down to our training facility and they're gonna do like mock drills and stuff. So it's up to the other units like us to kind of spread over and cover.
It's gonna be an active day.
Yeah.
Thank you to University Auto for supporting first responders and sponsoring us to do this ride-along episode. They're my personal mechanic and they're located close to campus just like this fire station. All right, y'all, this is the crew we're gonna be rolling with. I gotta start with Higby, the station Dalmatian. Then we have
Marty Streifler, firefighter.
Bryce Owsley, driver operator.
Tony Gage, captain.
All right, let's roll, y'all.
Let's do it.
The rescue's over here. That's the truck we're on. Big rolling toolbox. It's
look at it.
Yeah, right here. I'll pop this out. Everybody has always asked what this is. This is it's an exhaust hookup right here. We used to have they used to have the trucks just running in the bay with nothing to basically suck all the bad stuff out. So that
y'all in here passing out?
Yes, yeah, everything. So now we've got good, you know. This is like anything to do with like auto extrication and stuff. So we have you know, car wrecks, stuff like that where we need to cut some beefy metal. We've got spreaders or the jaws of life right here. We've got cutters, and then we even have rams too that can basically just telescope out. We've got 2 ladders to kind of run the full length of the truck, so we can grab those if we need them.
How much water does this truck hold?
So this truck right here, it has an internal tank of 500 gallons.
500 gallons.
Yep. So
is that average size?
Yeah, the majority of the trucks have 500 gallons, and then we have like a tanker that's rolling with a little more. The helmet up here that we've got on the side of the truck, it's pretty cool. It's got 343, and that's kind of a nod to the firefighters that lost their lives on September 11th.
To the station tour.
All right. On the other side, we got like a specialty truck that's for hazmat calls and stuff. So when we get to shift in the morning, everybody kind of comes in here. This is our gear area. So everybody's got a hook and a spot for their helmet and all their equipment and all that stuff. So
it smells like barbecue. You guys eat here cooking most of the time, or do you have time to go grab barbecue?
Yeah, we do a lot of our meals, which I can show you guys upstairs. Yeah. We're a big family up here. We're here for 2 full days, 48 hours through. So I mean, eating, cleaning, working out, a lot of time spent together. So we got like our little tribe, we call it. All right. And this is kind of so this is more of the living quarters up here. Throughout the years, we've got our captain's office over here.
Looks like a training room.
Yep, we got a training room back here. Some more chief's offices down here. We got to call this light will kick on right here. It's got a little override on it, but.
Who's the best cook?
Best cook? Everybody's kind of got like a staple meal. So yeah, it's all you can see. This is one of our older stations, so it's all an open floor plan. And everybody's throughout the bedroom, and then when we get a call, all the lights will be, we tell the lights here at 10. And then yeah, we got spotlights up here. So if we get a call, basically, they'll definitely come on and blast you with some light in the middle of the night. So
that's a crazy way to wake up.
Yeah. So we've got over here is our fire pole. Funny story about this is somewhere along the way they figured out one of the guys was sleepwalking and he didn't know he was a sleepwalker, or so the story goes. So they put this in because obviously they didn't want him. That's another call right now. So yeah, we got this.
Yeah, you want to go down that? I'm gonna be honest, I discovered a fear of heights. I will meet y'all down there. Let's go, let's go. So yeah, y'all, we're gonna be working between calls.
We're almost there. It's a motor vehicle accident.
Cops are getting the story of who hit who. Firefighters are trying to make sure nobody's hurt from who hit who.
They said she got hit about 40 miles an hour. So, airbags. Basically, they're loading her up now, and they're gonna get some records out here, but there's enough cops, so hopefully we'll get cut loose. So that's kind of where we're at.
I was hearing the call come in. I'm like, do you guys ever hear like streets and you're like, oh, I hope that's not.
Yeah, like a frequent flyer or something. Yeah, we have a few of those for sure. We know we're probably gonna go to that location while we're on shift. It's kind of this unique bond we develop with these.
A little sense of community.
Yeah, yeah.
I notice everybody seems to have a different role when you respond.
Here where I'm at in the back seat, I'm the firefighter, the labor at disposal. So our captain up front, he's got the computer, he's got all the information going to the call. He's kind of our quarterback, calling all the shots. Bryce, or our driver, he's getting us to the call, and then like anything that we need off the trucks, head the wreck we were on just now, head we'd had to cut or spread or use the jaws of life. He's gonna get that all set up for us while we're kind of doing our thing and get the other initial stuff done. So,
man, I was sitting there thinking, I'm living every little boy's dream right now.
We jump right into it. Yeah, you brought the heat with you this morning.
Has a baby that you know of ever been left at a station in Northwest Arkansas?
Siloam Springs they have it called a baby box and at their station, and it's a spot for that a child can safely be surrendered, and it's not in a bad situation. So we got a lot of pets that come and get surrendered.
Oh man.
Or people show up to the station, they found this cat or dog or bird. But our stations are all safe havens. You can come and if you're in a situation that's you don't need to be, our doors are always open and we can always kind of invite you in and keep you safe. So.
My heart's still beating, man. like, okay, we're back from a call. So how are your shifts set up?
Each shift works a 48-hour period. So we just came on today. We're here for 2
days straight?
Yes. Yep,
you don't leave the station?
We're here. We're here. So there's different schedules throughout, you know, the country. We're on a 4896. A lot of the departments in the area are. So
What's the first thing you usually do when you set up for a shift?
So we get the shift, we get our gear on the truck, get the truck checked, and then next biggest thing is, you know, we'll go and get our groceries for the next, you know, 2 days. We gotta get to the store and get our groceries. So.
Okay. I thought that was another call coming in.
No, you're good.
All right. Can we tag along with you? Go get some groceries?
Yeah, come. Let's do it. Let's hit the store.
All right, let's do it.
No rush. We're good.
We're going headsets off, gang, right?
Right around to the grocery store. I like it. Theoretically, could you spray water while driving?
So this truck right here has they call it pump and roll. So yeah, they could spray off this, but it's not common practice.
So do you guys, would you say half of your calls are campus and half are city, or what would that ratio? Because we're driving past.
Yeah, we just went past Station 2. Station 2, like they're in the heart of campus. You know, the majority of their calls are going to be this corridor, like anything, you know, involving the U of A. Engine 2's going to pop that call. We're kind of on the other side of campus, so Dixon Street. Dixon keeps us busy, especially during the school year. Game day, I mean, we're hitting Dixon too, but for different reasons.
You just keep the truck on Dixon ever?
We've had a few nights where like going back to the station, it's just a revolving door. So we've had a few where we've just posted up down there. We're like, bar's close in an hour. We're just gonna keep rolling.
So what happens like if you're in the shower and you get a call like that? It's just
so you're trying to get as dried off the best you can, and then you know you don't want to slide the pole because you're gonna absolutely burn your skin going down. I had a shift where it was like we got popped for a call while I was in the shower. Come back, I go to get back in the shower, we get popped for another one. I think it was like a total of 3 times. I was like, at the end I was like, no, I'm taking the shower. It will happen. It's the nature of the job. Sweet. 110 fever.
You don't have to run sirens for this thing?
No, it's a quiet one, I think. What's going on over the wall over there? Medical.
Like, all right, call number 6 done of the day. Now we're going to get groceries.
Yeah, we run any more with you, we're gonna have to get you an application, man. Holy crap.
Well, I was gonna ask y'all what happens if you get a call while we're grocery shopping, but I think we saw.
Yeah, that happens a bunch. We'll be in the middle of the store pushing our cart around, and then calls go out and okay. Gotta ditch the cart.
VIP parking, baby. I'll get the tortillas.
The dog loves baby carrots, so healthy snack.
This all go on the city's card?
No. It's a common misconception. People think they're like, oh, we're swiping the city party card. No, everything we basically everybody pools money together. We get what we need. So we're all business when we get here. We're good here. We're just doing breakfast.
So that's 48 hours worth?
No, so we're doing
mac and cheese. Go ahead.
You guys will do that.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it. You take care.
Thank you.
We're big self-checkout people. Sweet. Yeah.
How many calls a day would you say y'all get?
Tempo driven, depending on like what time of the year it is or school's in or out. I mean, I'd say city-wide, we average, 30 to 40 calls a shift, sometimes more than that.
When you respond to most dorm calls or campus calls, what's the typical call?
We get a lot of burn food. We'll get a lot of like automatic alarms, and it's one of those we still have to,
Still gotta suit up?
Suit up, treat everything like it's the real deal.
Is there something you know as a firefighter that might surprise the average city resident?
We actually have a lot of guys with like a whole spread of degrees, everything from like kinesiology to, we've got mechanical engineering. We've got a ton of people on our roster, and I think the coolest thing for me is like we have guys on the job with the schedule we work right now that are actually going to school, at the U of A or other places.
The infamous Dixon Street.
Yes, yes. So like Station 1 they used to call the Midnight Express because it's, you know, the bulk of the call volume was, you know, at nighttime, mostly around the Dixon area. So yeah, it used to be the old logo at Station 1, the Midnight Express.
The Midnight Express.
Yeah.
Can you ever sleep a full night?
We've had nights where it's just slow, or you know, everything's kind of a lull. And then there's been other nights that we're just going nonstop. So
I know that one of the big complaints I've heard about the job is sleep deprivation. Sleep schedule is crazy.
Yes. Yeah, we've got a couple trucks that are crazy busy. Those guys are up all night just running their tails off. So they look like day 2 they look like zombies. Everybody's drinking coffee and riding the crazy train.
We're just going up to the courthouse. I think a woman fell and hit her head on concrete.
How often do the trucks need to be serviced?
The drivers, when they come on shift, they do a full comprehensive truck check each shift. So they'll basically, you know, put the pump in gear, check all the fuel levels, oil levels, all that stuff. So
yeah. Well, I was gonna say University Auto is my mechanic, but I doubt they service fire trucks.
Yeah.
Is the rivalry between cops and firefighters real?
We have our little, you know, jabs between agencies that we like to take, but no, we really do. We got a good working relationship with them.
What made you want to be a firefighter?
I'm from New York originally. Got my start in the fire service up there volunteering. When I was 16, you can start doing like a junior volunteer thing up there. So that's kind of where I got exposed to it, and I've been hooked ever since. I went into the military and I was getting out. I still had that like part of me where I was like, I want to help people. I want to serve and be there for people. So
just today we've had the car accident. Somebody tripped at the courthouse. I think you said a seizure. I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah,
man.
You'll notice that we got a lot of veterans on the job because it's the closest thing we can get to you know, something similar to the military where you're still serving and performing, and it's really it's fulfilling. So
man, being from New York, this is a 9/11 episode feature. What does 9/11 symbolize to you?
Where I was living in New York, it impacted not just firefighters but families, so that was something that really left its mark on me, and yeah, that's a driving factor for sure of why I'm here today. And the fact that I'm able to put on the uniform and do what I do is it's extremely rewarding for me, and I don't take that lightly. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here and sitting in this seat and doing what I do.
Man, I know I'd have a new respect, and I'm assuming the audience does. Going on these calls, I see how much really it's an on-call job.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. So I appreciate your service, and I thank y'all for coming on, riding around with us.
Yeah, we appreciate the support. We really do.
I done stood up in that water with all kind of divers. I done made it out that fire like a firefighter.
So a day in the life of a firefighter. You know, again, they hit on a lot of the, you know, I think what firefighters would consider norms, right? They get to go grocery shopping together, you know, they get the recliners in their station. It looks all so much nicer than the PD. Their dorm rooms, you know, they got select comfort beds, all that good stuff. But some of the things that they have to see get right up there with obviously police, military. I think that's maybe where potentially dispatch and maybe even corrections, but corrections has to see plenty of horrible things as well. But when you have a type of training to medically try to take care of someone as a paramedic or a firefighter, saving lives is just kind of a different animal, right? And I've worked with a lot of firefighters that have lost track of, you know, the saves, the losses, the saves, the losses. And one thing I find with firefighters often is no matter what the outcome, whether it was predetermined or otherwise, they still feel like there was something they could do. It's like inbred in them. And I think we all go through that if something bad happens on our watch, where what could I have done differently? When none of us are God, none of us have that power and control. But whenever I do a debrief involving, and when I say debrief, I mean a critical incident debrief, for firefighters, they will hold on to that, that notion of what could I have possibly done, and the amount of trauma that they are exposed to, not to mention they're the highest risk for cancer, heart disease, and mental emotional struggles. So they're, you know, at risk at all kinds of different types of cancer, colon, cervical, prostate, lung, breast, leukemia. I mean, you name it, they're at higher risks, that even though they wear PPE gear, they're still exposed to some pretty nasty things, similar to probably our corrections folks, our police folks. But those carcinogens are just very unique for firefighters. And, you know, they have a very robust peer support group. It's just sometimes some groups are better with that than others, right? I don't need peer support. I got, you know, so-and-so, you know, and it's a process. When I was working at Hennepin County Sheriff as their first full-time therapist, I got to spend a lot of time with dispatch. And if you've ever been to Hennepin County Dispatch, for those of us in class here, it's quite a building and setup. I personally would rather negotiate with 4 people who are wanting to hurt themselves all day than to monitor the amount of screens, mouses, calls, multitasking. Like I would like to think I was, but I don't think I could do their job. And so again, similar to corrections and sometimes military, is they are stuck, right? They don't have an option of like, this is a really crappy call, I need to go take a break. You know, if you have great supervisors and great peers and you have the staffing to do it, that's great. And some dispatch centers have better staffing than others. Some dispatch centers have, you know, places where they have dorms where they can catch an hour or 2 of sleep, and then they just have to come up and answer within however many seconds if they need to take a break like that. But not every dispatch center has something like that. And then again, in the embracement of wellness, a lot of dispatch centers are trying to go to that, where you got someone that's been working nights, their kids are home all day, they can't get sleep, and then they come and they try to do their dispatch 12-hour shift, managing calls for 12 hours or more. And the amount of overtime, because when actually just recently we had a crash of the system, and we had dispatchers and CAD workers working on it 27, 28, 20, 30 hours at a time. So their jobs literally make all of our jobs possible and keep us safe. And the amount of pressure that goes into that with the training that they get is above and beyond. And it's kind of like every other fire or first responder specialty. You don't really know how you're going to do until you actually do it. And so their job is absolutely hard, and they don't have the ability often to have closure of what we are all doing on the road. If they are dispatching shots fired, or man down, or officer hit, or child abuse case going on in progress, or sexual assault in progress, you know, they have to get the information and that out as fast as possible. But with everything that goes on for police officer, firefighter, detective, investigator, you know, it's not often where we call dispatch and be like, here's the dispo on this situation you sent me to. Because by the time they would get that, they're probably on the 50th call of the night. But I can guarantee they would really appreciate that. And so they have a very, very powerful job that requires, you know, 24/7 in their intention and listening and not missing things. And their officer safety is like our officer safety is sitting in their hands and here. And so if they come to work not ready to go and they give the wrong address or something, that could be an officer's life potentially, or someone, you know, could be calling in a fake call of trying to stage, you know, something such as Jamal's situation in Minneapolis, where like they were prepared to take the officer out with luring somebody in, and it's yeah. And you have to make all those judgment calls based on a voice at the other end of that call, calling you in crisis. And they have a really tough job. And I will stop talking and let us watch what it's like working the night shift.
Uh-oh, here come Essence. You here till what time? Depends on what happens. Yesterday, I said the Q word, thinking we'll get some action in Euclid and Maple. Within the next 2 hours, I got 3 OVIs.
That's because your dumbass said the Q word.
Dispatchers are extremely superstitious. The Q word is quiet. As soon as someone says that word, everything blows up in dispatch.
It was a bad accident.
Engine 13, engine 2, both en route.
Hartsfield Heights, Bedford Heights, Valley View have all been called.
We're gonna get a squad right over to you. It's gonna be all right.
Being on a night shift, we generally get more violent calls. Bar fights, shootings, robberies, domestics. It could be anything.
Police dispatch. I hear gunshots.
Got shots fired.
I got it.
Oh my God. My boyfriend is shooting off a gun in the house. I heard a gunshot and I ran upstairs. I said, what happened? And he says, oh, I just shot a hole in the ceiling by accident.
Okay, is anybody in the home still?
No, I'm in my car.
Radio 94, the caller should be locked in her car in the driveway.
I think he's coming out to the car to see what I'm doing.
Okay, lock your doors. Are you able to get away from the area?
No, because his car is blocking me in the driveway.
Okay.
I heard another gunshot. Now I see him in the backyard.
Well, we're gonna take care of this for you. He has a gun with him right now, and he's in the backyard.
Caller said he's in the backyard. He's in the backyard.
Domestic calls can go from a simple yelling match to a shots fired call to an actual shooting call where we have a victim.
That wasn't accidental because there was 2 shots. Accidental is 1.
Police and fire, this is Abby.
I just opened up my door to my neighbor. She just barged in saying somebody's trying to kill her.
Caller states a female barged into his apartment and said someone was trying to kill her and has a gun.
Do you think there's any truth to what she's saying?
No, she's under an influence of drug, whatever. She's freaking out.
Okay, so this is just because she's high or under the influence of something?
Yes, yes.
What do you think she's on? Can you tell?
Water PCP. Yo, you need to calm down.
Radio 90 and 82. I have a welfare check. She appears to be high on PCP.
Do you know her name?
Her name is. Hey, yo, you need to calm down. You need to calm down.
That's my cousin. Look at the welfare check. It says somebody's trying to kill her.
Is it really your cousin?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Even though we have 17 communities, a lot of us live in the area. So it's not uncommon that you will pick up the phone and it will be someone on the other end that you know.
Oh my God, this is crazy.
Okay, I know. We're almost there.
Yo, get away from this. Come back in here.
My best friend, Essence, is sitting right next to me and I can feel her pain. Just added an extra level of stress that it was going to have a bad ending.
You better not put your out the window. Calm down.
Debbie, she just said she's going to jump out the window. He's trying to...
You're welcome, babe. Where's Essence?
I don't know. Her seat's cold. She's been gone for a while.
She MIA?
Yeah. Essence left the room. Anyone who leaves their desk long enough that we notice they're gone, it's free game.
She's gonna notice the stapler in there.
So whatever we can find goes in her bag.
And a loaf of bread in my bag.
What? We have a sense of humor. You know, it's to lighten the mood. It's to break up the shift.
Where did you go?
You missed me?
What were you doing all that time?
I had to go to the city. Where my headset? Y'all hear it?
Why is this here?
Somebody put it in my bag with the stapler.
That's all you found?
What else did y'all put in there?
Just keep looking.
Oh my goodness. That's what I get.
Next time maybe you won't leave for so long.
Dookie? It's important to decompress after work. Hey, Dookie. Hey. Was you a good boy? That's what I'm asking. Was Jalen a good girl? That's the real question. On night shift, when we get off, we're going to sleep when the rest of the world is waking up. Good morning.
How was work?
Long.
12 hours, huh?
Yeah. I gotta turn around and do it again. You ready for school?
No.
You're not?
No.
Well, you got a little bit of time to get ready. All right, I'm about to take a shower. Get ready for bed. While I'm sleeping.
All right, I'm about to get ready for bed.
You're not about to get ready for bed. You're about to get ready for class. You know, I'm gonna tell the teachers to text me
I'm gonna get ready for bed.
and make you turn your camera on every day.
People still put their cameras on too.
I'm gonna tell them to make sure yours is on every period,
Oh, thank you.
even lunch. Good night, Dookie. You can't get it? Here. Good night.
How long you gonna be at work? You do not need all that food for 12 hours.
You never know.
Yes.
I might get a little more hungry.
No, you won't. You do not need. Let me see.
I got my snacks and I got my
17
vegan stuff.
meals.
That's not no 17 meals.
It's more than enough for 12 hours.
I won't be hungry. Oh, and I found some snacks in my pocket. Woo. No, this for 12-hour shifts.
You do not need all this food for 12 hours.
Yes, I do. If not, I'll just eat it the next time I go to work. You need some of my vegan food here for you?
Don't leave it here for me. Leave it here for the next day.
We got a freezer at work. I can just put it in the freezer. If I don't eat it all, I might eat it all. Sometimes I stress eat. Yeah, sometimes if I'm stressed out, sometimes I stress eat. Duke, be good, okay?
You don't have to do.
And babysit Jalen for me while I'm gone, okay? See ya.
See you.
So that was just kind of a real short 7-minute video, kind of into the day in the life of somebody working nights on dispatch. Again, they're first responders just like everybody else, shift worked 24 hours, emergency responders. Our life and death depends on how they take care of us when we're working the road, whether you're a firefighter, police officer, corrections officer, a veteran, or in the EMS field or a nurse. We rely on dispatchers to get us to where we're going and to keep us safe. And they have to take in all of that information instantly, day in and day out, split second to split second, watching 4 different screens, multitasking. Well, you are the only objective is keeping them safe. And so again, our dispatchers and the culture within this subculture is a grueling one, similar to all the rest. And we will continue to go over kind of some of the cultural differences and similarities that we have among each one of these types of first responders. And I just don't, I want to make sure that we give equal quality to every single one. And we're going to be followed by kind of talking about a day in the life of what the reality is for our veterans. And while this is just one gentleman's perspective, again, we'll be talking in terms of much more depths in terms of how trauma, resilience, anxiety impact our veterans as well as they are a member of our first responder cadre as well. So we're going to watch this next video here.
Over 20 U.S. veterans will end their life today. That's the realization us veterans face and as a society. But how does it get to that moment? How do veterans end up in that place? Research studies show that 52% of veterans face loneliness, depression, PTSD, and suicide. But before we get into more statistics, we have to figure out who veterans are. Veterans can be 19 years of age and are 8.4% of the entire nation's adult population. That accounts for over 19 million men and women across America. Most of them are from the Vietnam War era and are over the age of 75, while 3.31 million are men aged 35 to 54, and 644,475 of them are women aged 35 to 54. But now that we know who veterans are, we need to talk about the fight that veterans face after service. The three most common mental health concerns of veterans are PTSD, depression, and traumatic brain injury, or TBI, and are the most publicized. 11 to 20% of Afghanistan and Iraq war veterans face PTSD, and I'm a part of that statistic. 12% of the Gulf War veterans, which is when my dad joined the military, and 15% of Vietnam War veterans state that they face PTSD every day. And I ask again, how does it get to this point? It's because they've lost their identity. We're told day one in basic training that you are the best of the best. You are the top 1% that all of America has to offer. Now, not everyone can serve or will serve, but the honor of defending America's freedom from all enemies, foreign and domestic, is a responsibility that few will ever experience or can even fathom. Day one of basic training, we're told that we're civilian bottom feeders and we're scum. And then we get built into this military machine. What happens after service? 50% of the nation's veterans face homelessness. That accounts for 1.5 million veterans that face homelessness and suicide. I question if that building up of a military machine and a tearing down of the individualistic civilian mindset is the root cause. I was a drill instructor from 2009 to 2013 at Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio, Texas. It was my job to tear down those civilians, destroy old habits, and build them into a military machine. I not only went through basic training, I went back for more. During my time as a drill instructor, it was my responsibility to make sure that either be rolling and folding clothes, marching drills, or screaming at them at the top of my lungs while they do push-ups for their wrongdoings. It was my job to build each men and women into military leaders. After the first week, their individual will starts to break. At the end of the third week of basic training, their individual will is broken, their self-esteem is low, the leaders rise while the followers cling to their wingmen. This is the process of basic training that begins the buildup of the military machine. After the third week of training, the hierarchy inside of that basic training flight, which is the men or women that will go through basic training together, form a team. Because it takes a team for the U.S. military to accomplish its mission. We follow orders or people die. It's that simple. We don't take notes. We don't ask questions. We simply follow orders. Day one of basic training, that is exactly what we programmed them to do. Do not ask questions, just do. After they graduate basic training in tech school, they go to their first duty station. It is here that we give them the ultimate identity and welcoming them into the military family. While off duty, we attend barbecues, weddings, birthdays, and celebratory moments like promotions. We know each other's spouses, kids, and we look after them. We then deploy with our servicemen and women, and we put our lives into each other's hands and trust them that we'll come home safe. We spend hours in the desert heat fixing airplanes, vehicles, equipment, or engaging an enemy by returning fire. We serve at the best and the worst times of our military career, and we do it alongside our brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, the military identity doesn't last forever. One of the hardest moments of my life was putting away my military uniform. I joined November 27th, 2001, right after 9/11, and my last day of service was December 1st, 2021. We have a retirement ceremony. We get our presidential certificates and our medals, and we shake hands in front of our friends and family and our fellow servicemen and women, and we leave. That's it. That's all there is. 20 years. The loneliest place on earth is when you achieve what you think will deliver the ultimate happiness, what you think will achieve the most extremely satisfying feeling you've ever felt. And that accomplishment lets you down. The replaced feeling is, that's it. That's all there is. After service, we try to get a job. We try to integrate back into a civilian world who doesn't even know who we are or where we've been or what we've experienced. We don't connect to civilians in certain ways because we don't know what it feels like to hold a 9-to-5 job, to be home every weekend, to be home for every holiday, to not miss a birthday, not miss a birth. Civilians can identify with the veterans because they haven't experienced what we've experienced. And so there's a certain disconnect that veterans feel to the outside world. Veterans need to find a support network outside of their immediate family. We needed a new mission, a new cause, because post 9/11 veterans are dying at higher rates than other Americans, and it increases if that veteran has a post-traumatic stress disorder or a traumatic brain injury. It grows 16% higher for the ones that have served in Afghanistan and Iraq. I'll tell you a story that sums up how veterans sometimes feel. A soldier's walking down the street. He falls into a hole. He scratches and claws to get out of the hole and cries for help. A senior military leader is walking by and looks down into the hole, sees the soldier crying. He says, "How'd you get down there?" "I don't know, sir. I need help getting out." "Man, you have all the tools you need to succeed. Dig deep, man." So he grabs a shovel and digs deeper. Just then, a psychologist and a therapist are walking by, and they hear that soldier's cries for help. And they look down. "How did you get there?" "I don't know, but I really need help getting out." So they pull up a chair, and they sit and talk with them for an hour. At the end of that hour, they fold up the chair, and they say, "It'll be okay, and we'll see you next week." Just then, a soldier is walking by, having a good time listening to music, and he sees that soldier weeping who has no more energy to try to get out of that hole. And so he jumps down into the hole with that soldier, and that first soldier realizes, he goes, "Hey, what are you doing here? Now we're both stuck." He says, "No, man, I was already in this hole last week, and I know how to get out." If we as a society spend as much time understanding the veterans and what they've been through, as much time as we spend thanking them for their service, we may save lives. If we as a human society show even more empathy, more grace, more understanding, more kindness, we may save even more lives. The DoD has created something called the DoD SkillBridge program, which integrates service members who are transitioning into internship opportunities. It connects them to private and public sector organizations that are looking to hire veterans to build their resumes and employment opportunities. DoD is all but guaranteeing that the veterans will have something to live for, to look forward to after service. 90% of the veterans will move back home to their childhood homes or to where they think that the jobs are. The DoD has stepped in and offered that transitional pipeline for every single veteran who will transition out of service. What you can do is contact your representatives and look into that DoD SkillBridge program. You can get involved with local veteran hiring events at your jobs, local mental health awareness events to bring light to this topic today. And what you can also do is not only thank a veteran, but understand where the veteran is coming from. Thank you.
So that last 7 minutes was just about as small of a snapshot as you can possibly get into the world of what it's like to be a veteran in our country, what it's like to serve and to give that level of service to your country with no questions asked, the amount of sacrifice that our veterans serve. And his story resonates with me deeply. I had the privilege of being the mental health director at a nonprofit organization called the Magnus Veterans Foundation. And I was a little intimidated being that I came from law enforcement and not necessarily military. However, I have several family members that served in Vietnam and the other armed forces. And so I had a lot of passion and connection to working with veterans. And many of my first responders that I work with as clients are first responders and veterans as well. But working with them hand in hand, so many of the things in this video are so true. We are continuously fighting that. We lose 22 veterans every single day to suicide. And that's a number we just cannot escape no matter what we do. And one of the part of the programs that he talked to regarding the Department of Defense is the transition period when veterans come back from combat to try to adapt to be returning and being a civilian. And what I've learned with the work over the years that I work with veterans is many veterans inform me that while this was an option for them, many did not participate because it was viewed as negative and they did not want to have anything negative on their record resembling any kind of mental health. And so many veterans find themselves turning to those maladaptive coping strategies such as drinking, isolating, hanging out with the wrong people. And they've lost that identity of that uniform, of that camaraderie of, I don't even have to think about what I'm doing next because I'm with my platoon, I'm with my unit. I get to go with them where they're going. I don't have to think about finding a job, looking for a job, doing a resume, relating to quote normal people. And so it's challenging. And when we talk about mental health, physical health, emotional health, when we talk about mental health, many veterans are individuals that we may see with a physical injury or a limb lost, where it's very obvious to them, to the rest of the world, what their disability is. However, the wounds that we do not see are the ones carried deep down inside that carry over into the significant rates of PTSD, anxiety, depression, significant increase in TBIs among veterans that impact their overall mental health and wellness. And so it's just, again, just a eyesight into the lives of what it's like to be veterans. And we'll be talking about this again more and more as we get going further into the training. And also, I just want to hear from other people in the room. There's so many veterans that are also in the first responder world, and the two connect very well. And I've never met a veteran that did not show the respect of other first responders just because of that similarity and shared space that they have regarding that. Our next video is going to be talking about a day in the life of being in an emergency room. And so again, in this umbrella of first responders, as we can't forget our paramedics, our emergency room doctors, our nurses. We've had so much tragedy in 2024 with losses of first responders. And one of the stories that comes deep to my heart is the loss of an ER nurse from HCMC after our lost fallen officer, Jamal Mitchell, a few minutes ago. And so we cannot forget the fact that while their job is to take care of us in dire needs of emergency medicine, they too are carrying our stories, our loved ones, the people that are watching us in pain or harmed or even killed, that they have to carry that with them and not only do their emergency medicine job that requires far more training than I've ever had and so much more pressure. And we just cannot forget what they also face from their perspective of working with other first responders.
Imagine you're with me in the emergency department and an ambulance rolls in with an entourage from the fire department. They're attempting to resuscitate a lifeless 13-month-old baby who they pulled from the bottom of a swimming pool. The 16-year-old sibling was supposed to be babysitting. Our ER code team immediately takes over life-saving efforts. We're watching as the emergency department technicians are having to rotate out and leave the room. They're becoming so emotionally distraught while given the compressions. Some of them, they're new on the job, and others, they're new parents and they have babies at home around the same age. Then you have seasoned nurses like me. We've been through this and worse. Standing in the doorway, watching anxiously are the paramedics, the firefighters, and the police officers who were on scene with a hysterical 16-year-old whose life will never be the same again. You could hear a pin drop in the silence of the room as we all choke back tears. The baby didn't make it. But as always, in cases such as this, the expectation of us emergency service providers, we gotta keep going. There's no time to process our emotions. We tuck our failures away. There's other patients to see, and there's more calls to go on. I want to talk about moral injury. Moral injury, this is the trauma and the unconscionable things that we have to experience. Moral injury is what's behind the nurse's broken spirit. Moral injury, it's what has us questioning ourselves when patients die under our care, what we could have done better. Was it our fault? Moral injury is what has us questioning if there's any good left in the world. There are some things you just cannot unsee, and memories you wish you could forget. There's 4 million nurses in the United States alone. 7 out of 10 of those nurses, 2.8 million nurses, they suffer from burnout. And burnout, that's a vicious spiral, because burnout is what leads to depression, it leads to your substance use, and it leads to suicide. That's a pretty crazy statistic if you think about it. I know really well all about downward spiral, but unfortunately, us nurses, we have to stay quiet. We don't want to admit that we have a problem The last thing we want to do is draw attention to the fact that we are actually becoming emotional and feeling what we experience in the hospitals. So instead, we'll isolate, we'll ignore, we'll even numb ourselves. We have the culture of shame. And that prevents people from wanting to speak out about their mental illness. So nurses silently suffer instead of being open and talking about their stressors. We need to bridge the gap between the cost of caring and healing our frontline healers. And what I mean by that is we need to take better care of those who care for others. I'm a pediatric emergency trauma nurse. I'm part of the leadership team at a children's hospital, and I've been in the emergency department for over 18 years. My colleagues and I, we put everybody before ourselves. Our patients, their families, they look at us like we're some kind of superheroes. Well, my little secret, it's what lies underneath the nurse's supersuit. It's a human being. We don't have superpowers. We've just answered our calling in life, and we just put other people before us. It is a selfless way of life. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we have to be on point. Just because our scrubs come off doesn't mean that we stop nursing. Imagine being that nurse who was up all night with a sick kid. She's at the emergency department. She's been on her feet the first 8 hours, 12-hour shift. And bed 5 is dying for a cup of ice chips. But you have an ambulance that just rolled in, and you have to take care of this patient. Hear the alarming? That's IV beeping. You've attempted to shut that thing off countless times, and you just can't seem to get it shut off. Last thing you want to do is wake the guy behind it, because he's the one that spit on you when he came in. Hear that phone? That's the floor. They won't report on a patient that's going to be going upstairs. But you hear that? That's the alarm. That's a monitor going off. We need to get the patient disconnected in bed 8 because they say they have to go to the bathroom. And then you think about it, remember, I haven't even gone to the bathroom all shift. We just have to hold our bladders. There's no time to stop and do that. Another phone call. It's a school nurse. School nurse is calling to let you know that your daughter is sitting in her office with fever and throat pain, but you're in no position to go get her. This patient that you're taking care of, turns out they're a chest pain patient. They have a history of a heart attack. The doctor's ordering meds on this patient. Her blood pressure's through the roof. Oh crap. No, I mean literally. Oh crap, bed 8, the enema kicked in. They didn't quite make it to the bathroom. Bed 5, they're demanding their ice chips. So how does a nurse create any kind of balance in her life when they're constantly running on fumes? This is my friend Kristen McCulloch. She, like countless other nurses, would put everybody before herself. She suffered from depression, just like countless other nurses. On April 2nd of 2011, Kristen committed suicide. She gave until she had no more to give. She was depleted. She was so concerned about the stigma around mental illness that she stayed silent. She suffered with the things that she experienced at work, which can be horrific, on top of severe depression that's just tucked inside. I had the opportunity to experience nursing from a completely different perspective. I was diagnosed in February of 2017 with a very rare malignant skull-based tumor. It's called a chordoma. I had an 11.5-hour surgery in an attempt to get rid of the tumor. And I woke up in the ICU. And the ICU nurse that was taking care of me, she left a lasting impression, and I'll never forget her. She was so intolerant. She was so irritable, and she completely lacked empathy. I sat there questioning how do nurses become that way? I would find myself in this repetitive thought, just stewing over the fact that this is how she's treating patients. And the thing that got me the most was, well, she had no idea I was a nurse. She had no idea my experience in trauma, 18 years in the ER. What she didn't know is that I teach these specialty nursing classes so nurses like her can get certified in pediatric emergency nursing and trauma. So my ego was saying, oh no, she didn't. But my heart was saying, I see a little bit of her in me. And I had to ask myself, how many patients under my care have ever said, how can a nurse ever be so irritable, intolerant, and completely lack empathy? Nurses do not start out that way, and that is not the way that we want to be perceived. It is important that I speak out to you in hopes I save these nurses from moral injury and burnout. So then I created a platform for nurses so they can speak out, use their voice, collaborate, come together. I want to make sure that we work on changing the stigma around mental illness and also create wellness programs for nurses, because nobody has to do it alone. We really need to work on taking better care of those who care for others, because nurses, we're just people too. Thank you.
Wow, that was a very insightful piece into what a day in the life of being a nurse and an ER doc have, working in an ER room. And I think oftentimes we forget, right? Similar to corrections, law enforcement, dispatch, military, we're at an all-time low in terms of being able to sustain staffing to support those who do this work. And it brings me back to COVID and what nursing emergency medicine had to face in the eyes of the first pandemic I've ever gone through in my life. And I think about my friends who are in emergency medicine, my friends who are paramedics, police officers, firefighters, who we were on the front lines. I know for me during the pandemic, I never didn't go to work. I did force myself to learn how to create telehealth with my love for technology, but it became necessary. But I worked for Hennepin County Sheriff, and at that point, you know, we all had to go to work. And so I chose to go to work masked and show up, and I didn't know how to do anything differently. I think about how people are treated in ERs for the 28 years that I've been in and out of them, working not only as a police officer, but also as a crisis therapist, of being inside the ER where there are life and death coding situations that are occurring while staff are continuing to try to do their day, and the expectations of nursing and aides and crisis workers who are there to evaluate folks who are struggling with a mental health crisis. And I did not necessarily have a hard time with some of the things that I was able to see in ER rooms as I did as when I was a police officer. But for some of my colleagues who were not used to that type of graphic detail that they may have been encountering because they were assessing someone who was in the ED endorsing suicidal thoughts and plans and intention, and our role in those emergency rooms is to assess those individuals and get them connected to the level of care that is needed for them. And that there lies another problem of first responders in terms of crisis therapists and social workers and other folks that fall under this umbrella of first responders and essential workers. And the things that they see and the lives that they potentially can lose because of the ability that they have a life in their hand, the pressure of that, I cannot imagine, as I've had to have that happen for me. One of the most horrific calls I've ever had as a police officer was a 13-year-old who was an 8th grader, and his 15-year-old brother was a avid gang member, and he had ripped off a drug dealer in the metro of Milwaukee. And this 13-year-old child stood in way of his 15-year-old brother to take a bullet in his chest. And as a police officer, it might sound very odd, but my role in that situation was to make sure the scene was safe. And I had 2 victims. I had a 13-year-old down with a chest wound, and his brother also got shot in the buttocks. And I was only one person with one set of hands. And I had to wait for EMS to get there and for my backup to get there to make sure that I was safe, that the scene was safe, that we could take care of the screaming multitude of children that were in this residence after this traumatic event. And I was with that 13-year-old from the time he left that house. I never left him. I rode in the ambulance. I assisted EMS with helping him with medical attention, all the way into the emergency room where he was literally split open, chest cracked, internal lavage. And I was there for the whole thing because in law enforcement, the potential of a death is, unfortunately, that person becomes evidence. And it seems odd, but I had to go anywhere that patient went. And sadly, part of my role was to be with him when he then was carted to the operating room, where ultimately he was pronounced. And the oddest and hardest thing I ever do was to show the ER, the OR surgeon where his bullet wound was, because I had to collect it as evidence. And so these are just one of the millions of stories that we all have under this umbrella of first responders that we cannot forget what people face. And some of the things she really touched on is the level of burnout. That's across the board. And she touched on a topic that is so close to my heart, which is this concept of moral injury, of going and doing a job, doing it well, wanting to do it well, and just not really ever appreciated. And we lose distrust in systems, and it makes it very difficult to do a job that is so valued, yet we don't get to necessarily feel that value when we're doing that time and time again. And so we're going to go into just kind of reviewing some of the similarities and differences between these different cultures that we've gone over. And these, again, are just a few. We have yet to go further into being a paramedic, being an EMT, in terms of what this is like a day in the life of our first responders. But things that we just kind of, you think about what goes into the specialties of each role. One of the things that I think about is just this overwhelming amount of brotherhood and sisterhood that we have in these types of fields, that we literally depend on our brothers and sisters doing their work alongside of us. And so many of the things that I teach in peer support, as you've heard throughout this video, is pain shared is pain divided. And that is literally one of our first targets of defense, is that brother sisterhood that we feel, sharing whatever color your uniform is with the other person, and being able to be a presence there, to be someone that can care them and get them through that, and vice versa. Many of these cultures have structure that involves a command structure. Every single person in this type of field has to carry and manage a license. They have to answer to a board of the state of Minnesota to carry that license. They must fulfill trainings and standards to remain in that role, to be able to fulfill their duty. Every one of us is on shift work, working 24/7, and many of us are on call, and we're just never quite off in terms of being off duty. Just about everyone I will work with will always have 2 phones in their hands, one for work, one for personal. Some people have 3. If they're a watch commander in some particular event, they may have 3 phones. And so navigating this is just kind of a common thread among all of the cultures. We all have common languages. We have acronyms for just about everything. Since joining a partnership with the Department of Corrections, I can't decide who has more acronyms, the military, the DOC, or police and fire. Pick your poison, but we all have acronyms. We all have a way of speaking. We all share a common struggle. Other similarities is that we're all short. Every single one of us are short in terms of our staffing levels, which then just creates that burnout level that she was speaking about for nurses, that 4 million nurses and 7 out of 10 of them are all struggling with burnout and all of the struggles that go with burnout that look like several of our most challenging psychological struggles. The exposure to trauma on a regular basis. The notion of it's just part of the job cannot be the only way. We have to embrace the notion of it's okay to not be okay with what I just went through in that 24-hour shift or that 12-hour shift or that 10-hour shift. And that trauma is something we were exposed to on a daily basis. And we'll go into that further in person in terms of some of the differences in terms of how many critical incidents a first responder may go through in terms of their entire career. For police officers, it's up to 190 in a lifetime. And when we go into the deep dive of trauma and how it impacts you in terms of your brain chemistry and being a brain injury, I will be able to show you how much we have to really appreciate our brain and take care of it, and why going into the next section on the 8 dimensions of wellness are going to be so critical in terms of what we get to do to take care of our own wellness, despite what we are facing in that 24/7 world of what our particular cadre of jobs are. We all work in government systems, with the exception of particularly ER facilities that could be private hospitals that are private and for profit. So there are differences there. However, we still all have command structure. Someone is still a lead, someone is still a boss. We have to report up, and we are used to this chain of command type of structure that keeps us in line and having a universal understanding of how problems can be handled and how change can be implemented. Trust from the outside in terms of their culture is common. We trust people that understand what we do for a living. And sometimes we get so comfortable in our type of work that we might not understand another first responder's world, and there can be some biases that go into that. And I'm going to talk about that in the next couple slides in terms of culture. Trained in first aid. Not a one of us is not trained potentially either as an EMT, but also emergency first aid to be available. So that's just an added pressure that we as first responders is just built in, that we are trained in medical approaches in terms of how to help someone with their immediate first aid, depending on what our role is. And then she mentioned it again, and I have it in my slide, this moral injury risk that continues to go up and up and up in what we do. And so, you know, as we take a deeper dive into each of the disciplines that we will face in class is where I want to hear more from you. Instead of me talking at you about my experience, I want to hear from all of you, your culture experience, so that each one of your classmates can gain a further understanding into what your lens sees through your eyes in terms of your experience and your subculture. And so that we can learn from each other and we can gain perspective that we might not have had, and we can be better partners and better peer support members to those that we care about and want to serve. Other differences between the specialties is some of us wear body armor, some of us do not. I know for firefighters, many firefighters are wearing body armor today, and some firefighters feel confident with that, and some are not. They don't want to be seen as police officers simply because police officers have a negative connotation to them in 2024 since 2020 and the riots of George Floyd and the incidents that happened. And so wearing that Kevlar for many firefighters doesn't necessarily represent protection. It represents something that they feel uncomfortable with, but it's so necessary in the world that they are facing. They are going to the same calls as police officers to wherever they serve in populations where they don't know what kind of environment they're going to be going into. And so any type of safety measure is something that we want to be able to incorporate for that first responder. I haven't met a first responder, no matter what culture you're in, that gets enough sleep. but some can sleep at work if they're on a 24-hour shift, or the simple fact that they're on a 24-hour shift, they may not get any sleep. And I know myself, I'm a 8-hour needed kind of person, and how my best friend and being a firefighter can be up all night long. Brings me back to college days of pulling my all-nighters to cram for classes. And those folks that are working 24-hour shifts, 48 on, 96 hours on, doing a great job, are ER docs that are working 24-hour shifts. And I constantly worry about the fear of making a mistake and how that would be horrifically horrible as a liability if that happened due to sleep deprivation. And some of these subcultures are just not designed for wellness. It actually counteracts what we think about when we talk about wellness in terms of how we take care of one another. In terms of nature of responses, crime, medical emergency, combat, types of equipment that you need to perform your job. Obviously, as a police officer, I'm going to have all kinds of gear. If I'm going to have a corrections uniform, I'm going to have similar gear. I'm not going to have a sidearm, but I'll be wearing a very similar uniform. Firefighters are going to be wearing a similar uniform. We just all kind of share different equipment on our waistband, on our belts. Military, depending on where you are in the military, you're going to have a lot of gear on, depending if you're in a civilian position or you're on deployment, right? So all the kinds of different equipment, a paramedic, their paramedic bag, all the things that they have to carry, a nurse, a doctor, a dispatcher, right? Who carries on all their equipment because they want to have that particular equipment for their long shift. And so we all carry different things in terms of the equipment that we need to perform our jobs. But when we are called to help, we tend to be the last who ask for help in our fields, right? We are the protectors, we are the helpers, we are the fixers. And oftentimes this draws attention to the fact that we don't necessarily take a pause to take care of ourselves. And this puts us at a disadvantage that we are the last to ask for help. And what we're going to be learning about in depth in this course is that if we don't take care of Team Home, it's really hard to do our best to take care of the ones that we love on a day-to-day basis. It goes back to the very simple phrase, if I don't put that oxygen mask when that flight attendant gives you that direction, I can't help anybody else on this airplane if I don't put that oxygen mask on first. I have to take care of myself, and that is not a selfish thing. If I take care of myself, I'm going to be able to help that many more people because I'm still here. I'm taking care of myself. And so many times we are caught in this theory that if I take care of myself, I must be selfish. And that just is not the truth. We do better when we take care of others. We are held to a much higher standard than the general public, which comes with a significant higher level of scrutiny that the general public does not necessarily have to answer to. We all have to answer to the media. We are all held accountable by our boards, by laws, by statutes. And that just adds another layer of pressure and stress to our subcultures that just adds to the level that we are already fighting against. Your office might be a squad car, it might be an ambulance bay, it may be an EMS side room. Where you actually do your work could be anywhere. You could be in a tent, you could be in barracks, it could be sharing a room with 6 other doctors, or it could be in a pod in a prison with 2 other corrections officers managing 120 inmates with only 2 people. So what is considered our office and where we perform our jobs are very different in terms of how we do that. Secrets are often kept among some of the specialties, right? Our uniqueness of what your role is sometimes is secrets. And there's a phrase in recovery, no matter what you're recovering from, is secrets keep us sick. I just met with a gentleman today who is struggling with his marriage and does not want to tell anybody because he doesn't want anyone to feel poorly about his spouse. And has been holding on to this pain and emotion until he could meet with me today. And again, it just goes against my mantra of pain shared is pain divided, that we cannot hold on to this stuff all alone. When we bottle up and we put one thing on top of the other, on top of the other, and our cup eventually gets full, eventually our perspective gets clouded, and we're not going to be showing up the way we would want to show up with those people in our lives, those that we love, those that we serve, those that we work with. And so when our cup gets very empty and it is compacted with too many things, eventually that cup overflows, the box overflows, the filing cabinet breaks at the seams, whatever metaphor you choose to use. So if we don't do home team and take care of ourselves first, we have a very long way to go. And again, it's common for others who cannot leave. They cannot leave their job. If I'm a dispatcher in a pod working a 12, 16-hour shift, I don't have the luxury, if I have a really bad call, to just say, hey, I need to take a break. We have to get permission to take a break. We have to make sure someone can cover our calls because it's emergency dispatching. And so we don't have the luxury of just taking a step back, getting a breath, and then going back. Similar to law enforcement, similar to corrections, similar to military, doctors, firefighters. We don't have enough time to process what we're going through. There's a study out for firefighters in particular that 70% of firefighters don't have enough time to process between one call to the next. So that's a lot of lag time where we have no time to process. We just have to go. And that's where many of us fall into trouble, is we are so used to just going that we lose sight of what's really going on in our body, in our minds, in our hearts. And we don't have the time to process what we just saw. And so oftentimes when that brain cannot process what it just experienced and saw, we just go to the next call because it's part of the job and we don't give ourselves time to process. And then we try to go to home at the end of your day or your shift or your week, and your brain is filled with so many different things that the brain becomes overwhelmed, and I might not sleep. I might be irritable. I might be restless. I might not be eating the way I should be. I'm not exercising because I'm so exhausted. And it's a struggle. So in terms of just talking about culture in general, we're not going to go into implicit bias that I know so many of us love to have. However, I do want to just kind of go over some of the basics as we talk about all these different types of subcultures. That culture in general, it's an integrated pattern of human behavior that includes our thoughts, our behaviors, communications, actions, our customs, our beliefs, and institutions, whether it be racial, ethnic, religious, or a social group, or a work group. So that social group can be any association which we self-identify that we belong to this particular group. So cops, firefighters, corrections officers, dispatchers, veterans, we are part of a social group that we belong to that particular subculture. Taking this beyond first responder, we look at our immigrants, refugees, our employment, our ability, our sexual identity in terms of these types of cultures. And all of these cultures exist in anyone who works as a first responder, right? We don't pick whose house we go to. We don't pick which incarcerated person we're going to have to work with that day. We don't have a choice. And so this really sets us apart from many other professions that we don't get to judge. We are here in the world of public service. And while that it is very morally fulfilling to do so, can also be significantly challenging. And so how we view ourselves and others in the world is impacted by our subculture and our own culture that we are part of. When we talk about just culture in general, in terms of having an awareness, it's understanding the difference of what makes me different from you, whether it be my job, my profession, my first responder subculture, my ethnicity, my sexual orientation, my gender identity, in terms of having an awareness of what makes me different than you and having a mutual respect for that person. We have our schemas in terms of how we organize all of the different things that go into that subculture and how it impacts our perceptions and our thoughts and can be easily retrieved at a later time. And it's our culture awareness, our schema, that then pours into what becomes our automatic thoughts. We all have them. They're automatic thoughts. They're thoughts that just come automatically, right? With those automatic thoughts, we then get into what those core beliefs are. And when we talk about core beliefs, it's those thoughts we have about what I feel about myself, what I feel about the world, and what I feel about the future of the world and myself. And so oftentimes our core beliefs, they may be extremely rigid, they may be absolute, they may be overgeneralized. And often in terms of being a first responder, we may make many overgeneralized assumptions about what other first responders do and their subculture. For instance, we all think firefighters just hang out in the recliner and watch movies. that might be some of their subculture, and thank God they have the time to be able to do that, because they have to stay up 24 hours or 48 hours or 96 hours to be able to handle the chaos of what is needed to take care of the lives of others in the public, to fight fires, to respond to emergencies, to medical emergencies. And so having an overgeneralization is diminishing the value of what that profession holds for us today and across the world. The belief is true, and having selective focus on information of our core beliefs and just kind of disregards other ways of thinking. And so whenever I work with someone, we talk about our core beliefs, right? Because we have to know what our core beliefs are and where they came from. And the cool thing with beliefs is if it's a belief, we can challenge it, right? If I believe X about a particular culture, I might not have that based in fact. I may have it based in an overgeneralization of that culture, or a negative belief, or a bias, okay? And so the challenge with our core beliefs is they tend to be stable. Our beliefs tend to be stable, and we're very resistant to change. So in this whole concept of wellness and being a new necessity, wellness is an intentional priority. Being a first responder has been faced with years and years and years and years of resistance, right? Because when I started in 1996, I believed in wellness. I believed in taking care of myself and others, but I was not going to talk to somebody if I had a struggle. I was a woman in position of power, and I did not want someone to see that as weakness. And I've had to evolve in the last 28 years of what I consider strength and weakness. Today, when we talk about vulnerability, you're going to hear a lot about vulnerability in the next 3 days after this 6-hour video, in terms of my favorite hero, Brene Brown, who defines vulnerability as not just weakness, which is what most of us think of when we think about being vulnerable. We think about being emotional. We think about being weak. We think about not being strong enough. And Brene Brown's definition of vulnerability is having the strength and the courage to be who we are, regardless of what someone else thinks, right? And so that's a very different way of looking at vulnerability. And so that literally has changed the way I do my work. It has changed with how I share my story. It has changed with how I view myself, because me doing it the way we've always done it doesn't work. Me stuffing and not showing emotion hurt me in every possible way for my 8 dimensions of wellness, which we're going to dive into here quickly. And so we have to be willing to challenge some of those core beliefs, challenge some of those schemas that we carry within us, and have an awareness in terms of what makes us different and unique within our subcultures. Challenges for all first responders, again, long and unpredictable hours, the emotional toll from that day-to-day grind of no predictability in what each day will bring. And while there is some predictability in that unpredictability, it is still unpredictable. And when we don't have things that are predictable, it doesn't create emotional safety for us. That's in relationships, that's in doing the work of a first responder, that's in all things. The challenges we also face is balancing our family life and our careers. This is a constant conversation I have when I have people in trouble in their marriages. It generally is going to always be around work-life balance. And what is our identity if we do not have the identity of the first responder subculture we belong to? And so this is a constant battle where, again, I will never ask somebody to do something that I'm not willing to do. But this is the constant struggle within marriages, family, parenting, being healthy, right? And so when people begin to start families and they're beginning to do all the things that they wanted to do to become great adults, is to have kids and to pass on their family values and to have that experience. And when they do so, typically the things that we drop off first are the self-care of how I take care of myself. And I can't tell you how many times I hear day in and day out, I don't have time. I don't have time to do X, Y, Z that I've asked them to try to be intentional about, right? It's always come down to that in terms of priorities. Higher incidence of PTSD, anxiety, depression, and suicide. That's going to be all over this presentation. the long-term sleep deprivation. Many people think they can just catch up. There's no such thing as catching up on sleep. So we have to have intentionality in terms of our sleep to be well. Isolation. Many of us in this career field, in this path, depending on what it is, that day in and day out grind of never knowing what's going to happen. And then something really bad happens and then you're expected to perform, do it well, being able to armor up to any scrutiny that comes from it and then do it again and again and again is just another level where I only feel safe in my subculture, right? I only feel safe there with people that understand what I do, and I only feel safe at home. And again, a lot of that isolation is leading to marital problems where the spouse of the first responder is really frustrated because they want to go out and do things. They haven't seen you for 24 hours. They haven't seen you for 48 hours, and they want to see you. They want to be with you. And all you want to do is sleep and go into that chair. And if you've ever heard of the Dr. Gil Martin book, The Emotional Survivor of a First Responder, you'll understand that at the end of those days, those shifts, we are at empty. And our loved ones have been waiting all day to see us and to hold us and to hear about our day. And so for many of us, that's the last thing we want to talk about is our day. We just want to be a dad, a spouse, a wife, a sister. And it's very grueling grind. We face injuries and have a lot of physical strain in our bodies. The retired police chief, Mike Goldstein, who's the creator of Provicta and then Health Quotient, often gives the poster child of all the bad things that happen to us when we retire from our first responder career. It's not a very good poster for recruitment, but our bodies tend to take a lot of toll on them, no matter what our first responder subculture is. The cynicism and delusionment that we often have with us, the sick humor that many of us have and need, right? How else do I handle what I just saw? That is something you don't ever want to see on TV and might not ever see on TV because of how graphic it is. How else do we deal with that other than to be cynical and humorous? It's kind of, it's one of our, I might even call it an adaptive coping strategy that rather than maladaptive. Unfortunately, our loved ones don't necessarily understand our cynicism and our humor. And if we are too cynical all the time, then that does carry into our family life and our worldview. And that's always my trigger for someone if their worldview has changed dramatically, that they are in the sign of burnout or danger or they're in trouble, is when that worldview changes so dramatically that's what I really worry about clients. And I see it more and more in young first responders. It typically takes the 5 to 15 to get there. And now today in the world that we are living in, which I would love to love, it is becoming more and more challenging to come and show up for these jobs and be positive and to be influential when we all got into it for the same reason. We want to help people, right? That's why I'm in it. That's why I'm still doing it, is I'm here to help you. I'm here for you to help others. And we want to play this forward. Hypervigilance. Don't think I've known a first responder since 2020 that is not. And it's hard sometimes for family members of the first responder to understand why they're jumpy. My wife knows that if I'm in the gym down here and I'm working out and I'm in my zone, that she does a knock, knock, knock before she comes in. So I don't have to have a startle response, a trauma response of her coming up behind me because of my past. And then again, just the cumulative stress and burnout. These are the challenges. And this is just one short list.
This concludes the end of the section covering the unique differences and similarities between each first responder subculture. Please click on the next link, section 3, covering the 8 dimensions of wellness.